there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of continuing with this ambulance, the Austin Military K2Y, is it they call it? KATY. It was called KATY in the film Ice Cold in Alex, for those of us old enough to remember it. One of the best adverts for Carlsberg lager ever made, I think. But you've got to be old enough to understand that reference.
Nobody's as old as you.
Nobody's as old as me. Black and white film. One of that series of British films about the war that were endless because we, it was our finest hour sort of thing, and we still soak in it rather. I mean, I suppose I do as well because I grew up in the immediate aftermath, so it was all around, like the wallpaper. But the kit, I'm sort of beginning to philosophise about kits, and I suspect that what happens when a company begins to work out how to make a kit, how to engineer it, and how to make the moulds that they squeeze polystyrene into under high pressure and all that. There must be some, philosophically speaking, there must be some balance between making a nice robust model you can play with if you wanted to and push around with running wheels, and extreme scale accuracy. And my guess is that they come to some provision in the middle where when you finally made it, you have a model that is just about robust enough to stand a little bit of handling or some handling without losing too much, bits breaking off. And to do that, they become bigger than scale. So parts are a little more robustly engineered in small scale, so that they'll stand up to a little bit of push and shove and, sort of robust handling. This kit, on the other hand, Gecko, which I think is a Chinese company, so many things are made in China these days we don't even know. I think one of the things you see in kit reviews is they often will quote how many parts are in the kit. I don't think it actually says on the box how many parts, but when you look at reviews, they often talk about the parts count, and it's sort of generally held that the more parts, the better, which I can sort of understand. I mean, Monogram, decades ago, used to mould all massive amounts of detail in one big piece. So if you had half an aeroplane fuselage, there'd be a lot of detail moulded onto the inside. It wasn't separate. You could paint it. It was actually quite well done for its time. These days, that's all separate. You have to glue it all in. You've got to find out where it locates. Gecko, somehow, I think, my sense is everything has been made to scale. So it's rather small. There's a lot of parts, and they're a bit spindly and rather fragile and vulnerable. Alongside that, normally on a kit, there are locating pins with a hole that the pin fits into so the two parts will locate accurately together. On this one, there are such things, but they're rather small and minimal. More like little tiny buttons than anything else. They're not very accurate. So you're left trying to place parts and glue them together by eye to get them into the right orientation. And it's a bit of a struggle. I mean, I would, if I hadn't been building kits for, 50 odd years or more, I would be finding this really hard going. I can manage it, but I'm still not entirely happy. It's like I've been trying to put the bonnet together. And the bonnet there are two side pieces and two top bonnet pieces. I've got these taped together. These are loose. These are glued in. But I put as much together as possible, glued on the wings and the front bumper. Then you're supposed to put the radiator, the front radiator cover on, but what I elected to do was put this in first, the driver's driving position, so that it would give me some sort of location for this radiator part. Once I put these two panels in loose, I could push this in till it lined up properly, and I think I've almost got it. but it's still not entirely clear because of the vagueness of the location built into the parts of the kit. So it's a bit challenging at times. And even the sides, I had to trim quite severely down here to get this to fit properly. There are still gaps. And I'm sort of saying to myself, well, you know, by the time this is rattled across the western desert and rocks and stones and sand and crud, all the parts aren't going to fit properly anyway on the real thing. So I'm sort of letting myself off. But it's curious. I do wonder, because Airfix have come out with their version of this exactly the same ambulance. I do wonder what that would be like. Whether I suspect Airfix probably go for the slightly more robust end of it. I still like Airfix. I've been building those forever. You know, starting with plastic kits in a plastic bag for 2 bob. A fond memory. They've improved considerably since, but I suspect they are a bit more robust.
So that's where you're at.
That's where I'm at. I've just done the weathered the tyres. I painted the tyres a very dark grey, far better than black. But knowing from watching the film that they get very weathered and sandy and slightly coloured, I've lightly oversprayed the tyre and the wheel with the sand colour. And then I've got to wear back the black of it. Actually, that looks quite good on that screen, even now.
Well, on there,
well,
yeah.
The walls are sort of greyish and the treads and the inner bits are still sandy and worn, so not looking too bad actually. I'll get the treads a bit darker so they stand out a bit more gradually.
Good.
Au revoir.